Sonic echo that leaves no room for doubt. All the shots bring it back to what it's not. Make a move, do we do? As the world cries tears in our hands, are we all part of a bigger plan? All the shots bring it back to what it's not. Deepest oceans, they can't portray enough. Empty spaces, time to rust and dust. There's no wonder left for us to love. No warmth or shelter, just satellites above. All the shots bring it back to what it's not. Make a move, do we do? As the world cries tears in our hands, are we all part of a bigger plan? All the shots bring it back to what it's not.
everybody, and welcome to round number 2 here of the World Touring Car Series presented by FreeM UK here at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalonia, live on RaceSpotTV. My name is Noel Rambo. I've got Justin Prince joining me in the broadcast booth with Hugo Luis down behind the cameras for tonight's presentation. So we come off of an absolute barnstormer of an opening round at the Silverstone Circuit just 1 week ago, and my goodness, Justin, what an opening round to behold. It means only great things as we swing over to Spain for the second round of the championship.
Barn burner is an understatement, because while things stayed calm in the opening round, and opening race should say, of the opening meeting day, the second and third races were very crazy with the inverts coming into play, and it really tested drivers and their ability to be able to manage through traffic and try and find the cleanest routes on forward. Today's race could be very much so the same trend, because this is not the easiest place to pass in the first place, Nolan, and in turn, those middle and third portions of the meeting day today could be very, very busy and could really test how drivers could fare out in the early going for this championship.
2 out of the 3 races last week featured Team 1-2 finishes. We'll see if that trend will continue over here into Spain. Second round of a 12-race championship. The opening 3 rounds taking place over in the continent of Europe. Let's swing on over and take a look at how the standings shake up after last week's race. Guinness on top with 227 points, but that is not far off of one Josh Thompson, just 10 points behind for Knight Rider Motorsports. And of course, Ashley Sutton rounds out your top 3 with 208 points. These are, of course, your pro standings. 2 different categories to look at today, and it's a bit further of a battle than in the AM standings. As you can see, Neller has just rocketed away already, 33 points clear of Ollie Peacock, and Rushworth just 2 points behind Peacock as well. So for now, Neller certainly the driver to beat in the AM class.
Yeah, things have been looking very strong for Neller in that AM class indeed, but things still remain tight in my opinion for the pro side, because there wasn't really a clear-cut driver who broke away. There were clear-cut groups, but it's going to make things very busy here in Barcelona.
And so with the standings complete, why don't we take a quick swing on over to a track guide presented by RaceSpot's very own Paul Smith.
Hello everybody, I'm Paul Smith from Team Mad, and welcome along to round number 2 of the World Touring Car Series, and we're coming to you from the historic version of the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalonia. So we've got no final chicane to worry ourselves about, which means fast, free-flowing action here for these TCRs. Of course, 1991 was the first time that this venue hosted a Grand Prix, and that was won by a certain Nigel Mansell, who of course went on to try his hand at touring car racing in the mid to late 90s. But what's it like to go and drive around here in the Hyundai Elantra? Let's find out, shall we? Okay then, here we are then for a lap around the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalonia. Important to get your line right out the final corner, not run too far wide like I nearly did there, and carry that speed down the start and finish straight. You're going to be touching about 230 kilometers an hour in this Hyundai Elantra. Into the braking zone now, onto the brakes, down to second gear. Use the curb but not too much, don't touch the sausage curb, it'll push you wide through turn 2, and then be careful with your throttle around turn number 3. This is a brutal corner on your front tyres, especially your front left tyre. It really does struggle around this track. Turn number 4 then, again you can be quite light on the brakes, a little bit of trail braking to help the rear rotate on the power nice and early. Again, long radius hairpin. Turn number 5, over to the right hand side, downhill braking, and then use the curb on the outside to your advantage. Turn 6 is a nothing corner really, but it sets you up for turn number 7 then. Bottom of the hill, onto the brakes, over the curb, turn number 8 there. Turn 9, line crest is this one. You've got to be careful with your apex, over the curb again, using all of the track to your advantage. Then we're going down to turn number 10. Now this is where you'll be different to the Grand Prix layout. Onto the old historic turn number 10. Keep the car over to the left hand side to open up this corner here. Turn number 11, Again, patient with your throttle application. Use all the curb and then some on the outside here. Again, using curb on the right hand side there, then get your braking right. Get it slowed down nicely and then onto the power nice and early for the final corner. And there we go, that is a lap of the Barcelona circuit here. Going to be an intriguing track. It's quite a technical track as this one. You've got to look after your tyres as well. So I think a little bit of who can look after their front tyres the best will help them out around this venue. But how will that go? Well, we'll have to wait and see.
How's it look with your track guide on board with Paul Smith? Started on pole position for race 1 to 3 on the night is Kieran Harrison, with Ross McFarlane starting beside him on the front row, 1/10 back. Josh Thompson is in 3rd with Courtney Guinness in 4th. Carl Jensen is in 5th with Jack Sedgwick down in 6th. 7th place holds Fraser Smith with Swinovich down in 8th place. Jaroslav Kabula is going to be 9th place with Ashley Sutton rounding out your top 10. David Baker and Dan Holland rounds out road number 6. The rest of the grid going to be coming through on your screens now. And Justin, as the field is starting to grid and we get set to get this first race of 3 underway. 20 minutes of action coming on up, and what do you think we can expect coming down to this first couple of corners?
Well, based on what we've seen for the last time out for the opening race, expect a lot of drivers trying to get good track position early, especially knowing how difficult the flow can be around this circuit. Keep in mind, this is the historic circa 1995 layout, but also expect some of the heavy hitters for the class to try and break away early. For example, the AM class, the pole sitter for that side, has a massive buffer with several pro drivers separating P1 in qualifying for them and the second place car in Neller.
The first of these 3 races is usually a bit more civilized, but as we all very well know, these races don't take much to get kicked off in a whole world of sparks and fireworks. So we'll have to see what will be waiting for us here tonight as we reach the end of the 2-minute gridding time. A couple of drivers, I imagine, not elected to grid on up. They'll be starting this race from pit road. And now we wait as the revs start to build. Lights out, and we're underway from Barcelona. Harrison's gotten away well. McFarlane trying to chase him down, and already Harrison moves over to cover down the front straightaway, and it's now a heads-up drag race down towards turn number 1. McFarlane looks to give the bump to the core driver, and for the time being, looking for the inside, though, into turn 1. Harrison's deeper on the brakes, but misses the turn 1 apex. He's right on board with one of the midfield cars, and already Calamity deeper in the field. 2 cars getting set wider side-by-side for the race lead up in front as well. There's Jonathan Walker, who's gone up with one of the full set cars deeper in the field as David Baker looks to make up some spots further up into the top 10. Overall, apart from that initial scrap, though, Justin, clean start in this couple of corners.
Very clean compared to how things fared out at Silverstone to start the season, but already we're seeing defensive moves. Keep in mind, Harrison seen move right towards the middle of the racetrack to defend that time into Repsol approaching seat. Expect those types of moves early on, knowing the flow of this circuit. One driver just got nearly doored off the circuit. The 80 nearly got knocked off the track by Fraser Smith.
Battle still looking to pick up as we sling on down into turn number 7 of Worth. Up there comes a bit of contact at the bottom half of the top 10, and you can watch just up front here with Josh Thompson trying to run down the top 2, and there is one of the MDS drivers, the number 9 driver of Dan Holland, currently 15th place. Then they swing their way out through campsite, blast down towards La Caixa, down into what was at first a tight hairpin with the hard braking zone. Now much more of a sweeping corner where the apex opens up. Mark Fletcher going side by side with one of the Pure Sims drivers of Michael Evdoka through that hairpin. The 111 making up some speed. He'll blast around the outside line of his SimTech Sports teammate.
Decent job actually making that outside line work that time around. Usually that's not the easiest place to get a move done, let's put it that way. As we're already seeing, single file through much of the pack, and this is just the trend of this type of a racetrack, which is known for being one of the most difficult to try and make maneuvers to get side by side along. It's very much a rhythm track in turn, Nolan, and as we've seen so far, if you're able to get yourself close enough, you may have a chance going through the start of Sector 2. You may have a chance coming down the longest straightaways, whether it's turn 1 or whether it's towards the start of Sector 3. It's not the easiest places, though, as we now follow along in the heart of the pack, as Evdoka has gained a few spots amongst the side-by-side.
But now losing those spots as Tom Dadswell pokes his way through. Miguel Garcia in the full Sen Racing Majors garage crew looking to make up another spot as well. That Pure Sims driver, though, not going to give this one up by a long shot, looking to lunge around the outside line to take the spot back for the number 83 Honda Civic up his inside, almost 3 wide. Right there as they sling their way down in towards Sayad, and near contact again with the Repsol Honda of Alex Neller, and there is contact that sends the 83 wide.
And part of the reason I think Neller's trying to be so aggressive amongst all this is, keep in mind, leader for the AM class, Michael Polasek, is currently having about an 8-car buffer between them. Here's what happened towards the start, though. So this is one of the Free MUK machines, taking a little bit of an excursion, and the blue cone unfortunately becomes the third victim involved.
See one of Ollie Peacock's wheels there actually currently lined separate from the race car. Of course, the new damage model being put into full effect there in this touring car class. As you look back up to live pictures, there's 2 of the core drivers of Jaroslav Kabula as well as Swerdovic, who were part of the 1-2 finish that they had. I believe it was race 2 at Silverstone just 1 week ago, trying to make up some ground. They're currently sitting just inside the top 10, trying to run down the Simpson driver of Jack Sedgwick in his number 10 Honda Civic just up the road from them.
Yeah, we'll say when it comes to Sedgwick and that side of things, it's been an intriguing start for Sedgwick because he's actually under the banner of Craig's Setup Shop. Keep in mind, for this respective series, for comparison's sake, Josh Thompson in similar colors is under the Knight Rider Motorsports banner. But those respective competitors, Nolan, have had some adventurous practices where whenever they've been warming up to prepare for the inversion races, have managed to flip their cars upside down so far this season. But in regards to the pace themselves, that whole entire contingency of drivers who work together have been very solid. It's just been the matter of getting into the right spots to contend for positions, like we're seeing with Thompson and his pink and teal machine.
Of course, car placement is very, very crucial at races like this, especially at tracks like Barcelona, where, as you mentioned earlier on, Justin, that it is very, very difficult to overtake at a track like this with all of the medium speed sweeping corners that you have to contend with. But so far, I would say a lot of these drivers have been doing a fantastic job with that. Just on the main screen, you ride on board the 007 of Shield, currently sitting 23rd place, and then on the bottom right is the battle for 13th place, with Baker trying to keep a couple of drivers at bay there as they sling their way out through camps and down towards La Caixa. So far, has been a very civilized start to this race, but that being said, so was Silverstone before the inversions kicked in. That is really where we got a lot of the action from, is in those inversion races. I noticed that so far, it seems like a lot of drivers have been wanting to just take this first race a little bit easy, use this as a bit of a bench line, right? So you can figure out how it'll be racing in a big pack of cars like this, and then use that experience to lunge into races 2 and 3 that much stronger.
Oh, trouble in front of them. Someone got loose.
Oh.
It is Jack Sedgwick continuing his trend from last round. He got hard along the edge of the curbing and nearly spun himself out.
You saw all the smoke just at the bottom of the shot. I thought he might have had contact from behind by Swerdovic, who he was battling with for 7th, but that, like you said, not the case. Just took too much of the sausage curve, and that's caused him to lose a ton of spots. That is the one corner where you cannot afford to get it wrong as he gets into the door of Michael Polasek, one of the AM drivers who pushed himself up another spot. And Sedgwick just trying to stem the bleeding at the moment in his Craig Setup Shop number 10. Gonna get leaned on by Neil Butler and his full Sen Racing Majors garage machine. That number 16 car looking aggressive, trying to lunge one up the inside, right at the top of the hill into turn 4.
Yeah, look at the replay. Right there, gets it with the left side tires, and it's all about positioning and timing, as we talked about. That time, the positioning, not too great coming out of the final corner in turn. Sedgwick has now been shuffled back to 11th. But I want to touch upon the driver who just made a move past him, Michael Polasek. An incredible season, I will say, Nolan, so far, and that's not to be surprising because he's one of the up-and-coming drivers, I think, you have to watch for this year because he's been dominant in Porsche Club of America competition for several years, is now taking that over to official racing, as we see in our battle.
This one just a little bit further down. That's a lunge from Mark Fletcher up the inside of Dan Holland into La Caixa in the longer sweeping hairpin. Dan Holland doesn't look like he was too pleased with the 111 as he tried to really pinch Fletcher in right on the corner exit. You are right with Oscar Mangin, who makes door-to-door contact with the 111 as tensions starting to ramp up here in Barcelona, as that's going to result in Fletcher losing a spot instead of gaining one like he would have hoped for.
And these drivers, keep in mind, need to be careful with how they're trying to play around with this, because it's pretty clear that if you lose that preferred line, you're likely getting freight train with the trends. But in turn, some of the drivers are not only making that contact, Nolan, but in some cases rubbing the bottom of the race car along the edge of the curbing. And that may eventually lead to a buildup of damage as this run goes on. And with the case of it being 20 minutes, if something breaks on your car, you kind of don't have too much time to recover from it. For reference, Walker is the only driver who's come out of the pit lane from early troubles, is in 40th, and is nearly a lap down.
And that is, you know, with just under 12 minutes to go. So that's unfortunately no way he's going to be able to regain all of that lost time. But it just doesn't work with 11.5 minutes left to go. Here is the battle for the race lead starting to pick up a little bit. Kieran Harrison has so far led every lap from the drop of the green flag. Ross McFarlane, I'd imagine, though, looking to put a stop to that before long. The Pure Sims driver is so far doing a good job in his number 127, but bounces over the curbs a little bit on the exit of turn number 9. And as they throw the way through Kempsa, this is again one of those crucial corners. You have to get the line right. McFarlane took a bit of a tighter line through there. He'll have the draft all the way down the straightaway as he'll look for the inside. He is going to look for the inside, deeper on the brakes. McFarlane going for the race lead on the core driver, and Kieran Harrison will fend him off on the outside line, and that's good news with the 93 because he's going to have the advantage for the next 3 corners.
And now they're touching. Harrison nearly gets himself turned. What a move by Thompson to take advantage of this.
How about Josh Thompson out of nowhere? The 51 car goes to the front in his Hyundai Elantra. So Kieran Harrison now, instead of going to be defending the lead, ends up losing that courtesy of one Ross McFarlane. And I can imagine Harrison's going to be eager to get that lead back. And he has this very long straightaway to make that work. But don't forget, with the way these gear ratios work, it's not uncommon to see drivers topping out at the ends of these straightaways. That's not going to stop Harrison going to the inside line as the 51 tries to defend. Up into turn 1, Harrison just slows it down in time to get the race lead. He got top 5 all under a blanket, and then Farley's being muscled out by one of the core drivers, according to Guinness, who was the left-hand side. More contact! Guinness gets sent for a ride, but somehow hangs on.
Well, Pierre Simpson Core not making friends with Monero. Let's put it that way right now. But all of this, really, you have to factor it in. Started with Harrison just missing the bottom. The problem is he's now under pressure with someone who knows how to take advantage of those spots immediately. Thompson, for a reason, has lots of pro racing experience, and he's trying to use that experience right here, right now, over the back bumper of Harrison. And Harrison cannot afford to do what he did the last time in the same corner. Otherwise, he may get sent again.
Coming back up towards Kempsa, and you can see a couple of drivers looking to cut it in tight. Carl Jensen all over the back of the 127. I can imagine those core drivers are looking to try to link up with each other so they can provide some rear gunner support to Kieran Harrison, who at the moment has got really no help up there for the race lead, but he got a good run through Kempsa, so that will keep Josh Thompson at bay for now. But Carl Jensen giving a bit of a tap to the back end of Ross McFarlane in his 127 Pearson's Hyundai, so that car is just not going to be looking too pretty on the back end of things if this keeps up for long. I can tell you right now that Carl Jensen, he's ready to force his way through if McFarlane doesn't let him through here.
And there's a reason, there's a mantra that's come to mind with how the performance has been for Core Sim Racing. It's been the month of Core, because they've been in the conversation for almost every major victory on this network since the start of the month. And when it comes to this car in particular, it's their bread and butter machine. There's a reason that they are always this quick. But it's not going to be easy for second. Thompson and McFarlane a little bit touchy there.
Very late blocking move from Josh Thompson, probably driving out of the mirrors a little bit, and this is a replay of one driver getting sent way wide over at the top of the hill. That is just out of Lakaisa. That was Fletcher that got sent around. So Mark Fletcher having a bit of a moment deeper in the pack as you go back to live pictures as this battle continues to rage on. Josh Thompson with another little bit of a nudge, and McFarlane gets one in turn from Carl Jensen. These guys are not going to let each other go, and this is going to be a battle that is going to come right down to the last lap, possibly the last couple of corners.
I agree with you with how this is faring out. The problem is going to be, though, Nolan, They fight too hard right here, right now, with 4 estimated laps to go this time by the stripe. Keenan Harrison may be able to waltz away and walk away. He's gained a 10th alone this lap to that 7/10 advantage. And it just seems like Thompson just hasn't been able to fully get the grasp and close back up quite yet over the course of this lap, and it's really bottling everybody else in turn back up.
I have to agree with you on that one. I mean, at some points you have to realize you need to really work together if you want to have a chance at going for the race lead. But I can tell you that Carl Jensen, not among those drivers, as he's actually flashing the headlights now at Ross McFarlane. Really wanted the 127 out of the way. If anything, Carl Jensen's going to be trying to fight these guys as much as he can to allow his teammate to be able to pull that much further out in front, because it means that Harrison has just that much less to worry about when it comes around to that final lap. And at the moment, the way it's sitting, Harrison's really just got to focus on running his own line and just not making any mistakes, because these guys, they're at the point where they can't catch him with the draft on just one straightaway.
And it doesn't help either. They're not getting good runs coming out of the final corner. Several kicked up the sand. The least of those was Ross McFarlane. There's a reason he's got this chance, and I think Thompson has picked up on he needs to let them go. If he doesn't let them go here, they end up bottling each other back up even more and let Harrison go. This is the big chance for these drivers to close on up if they can settle things out off this exit.
Thompson thought about having to look through turn 3, realized it probably was not on, so he decided to instead back out. Now, though, with a lunge all the way down the inside into Repsol, and that, again, is not going to work. Carl Jensen able to pull that outside line that these front-wheel drive touring cars can do oh so well. That's going to allow Thompson to try to get a more open line as Guinness make contact.
Thompson nearly turned himself across the nose, in fact, to your points leader in the overall standings. That was playing with fire, let's put it that way, with how things are breaking out. But the problem is, all that squabbling, they gained a 10th before the corner entry, before they went back side by side, Nolan. They've lost a 10th and a half since.
Gap is about 0.8 of a second, so there is still a possibility for them to catch up to Kieran Harrison, but McFarlane cannot afford to have any more pressure from behind, and with one of the core drivers right behind him, I can tell you that that pressure is not going to be going away anytime soon. As look a little bit further back to, I believe this is going to be, according to Guinness, actually your points leader, just further in the back behind Josh Thompson, who is still trying to see if he can make up some ground in his number 51 Hyundai Elantra. It's been a good run so far for the core group, right? They've got 3 drivers so far within the top 10. Make that 4 drivers, I believe, actually possibly within inside the top 10. So it's been a solid run for them so far today, and no doubt they're going to be looking to carry all of that momentum into races 2 and 3 coming up forward in just a few moments.
There's a lot of momentum. You have to give credit to the Hyundai side of things since it's come to the iRacing service. Nolan, a lot of excitement for these types of cars since then. It's always put on great racing, this respective class, in my opinion. Keep in mind, there's a lot of competitions on the service when it comes to the Hyundai machine. And it just so happens RaceSpot's own Tyler Maxson is currently in the midst of qualifying at Daytona International Speedway, dominated in qualifying by several seconds just moments ago in his session.
What was it, 3 seconds clear of second place when we last checked in?
0.013 seconds. And here comes a move. Good grief on that send, Nolan.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Josh Thompson clearly did not see it coming, but he is not happy about it. They wants to get that spot back in as defending. Now over to the right-hand side. Got to be careful making moves like that in some of these tighter corners where you really can't pass. Otherwise, you could find yourself being sent by drivers that don't know quite where to put the car. Thompson all over the shot, left and right, trying to reel in whatever he possibly can, and got a bad run, though, coming up around through the top of Capsa, so he's not going to have the run down towards La Caixa. Fraser Smith, though, will have an easy run, and he'll lunge up the inside of Josh Thompson.
Couple laps to go. I think most of these drivers at this point, Nolan, have realized they're out of the main grouping to have a chance to reel in Harrison. They're fighting for whatever points they can get before the inversion spots. And keep in mind, that's going to make things even more tricky once we get to race 2 with how things fare out. Big picture may be coming into play. By the way, Ashley Sutton has quietly been the 8th car in this entire pack, has been the only driver not really sparring with anybody.
That might all change here, though, with just 2 laps left to go in race number 1. How about Swertovich looking around for the outside line of Fraser Smith down towards turn number 1. That Indy car going to have the draft all the way down the front straightaway. but I think Fraser Smith just a touch deeper on the brakes will allow him to hold on to first place, but he hops the curb, and that caused him to get into the door of the 80, and that will send Smith wide through 2, and he'll lose that spot. Now Ashley Sutton all over the back end of Fraser Smith trying to find a way through in his Napa machine. How about Jack Sedgwick as well, looking now for the outside line up into turn 4.
That was very dangerous from Sutton. That was micro inches from getting himself turned. Now he's dooring the 167. Ashley Sutton's not holding any punches back to the point where he is not afraid to make contact.
I'll tell you what, this is why I love touring car racing. It is just hard-fought racing from start to finish, and the margins are the finest that you will see in any level of discipline in the motorsport world.
Absolutely incredible racing. There's a reason I love this type of class of racing. You can go door to door for several laps. You can bump and bang a little bit with them as well. And it always puts on this type of excitement in all portions of the field. We've seen that so far today. And I think Jack Sedgwick, he's ready to try and force Sutton into an uncomfortable position here.
And you saw the lunge behind by Kabula trying to look at the inside of the Craig setup shop machine of Jack Sedgwick, who now will try to find the inside of that Napa machine of Ashley Sutton as well. Final lap, I believe, has begun as of a couple of minutes ago, or it is going to be started in a couple of seconds here as your race leader rounds the final corner. So 1 lap left to go in race 1 of 3 from the second round, the World Touring Car Championship. And Jack Sedgwick looking to see if he can have a solid run, as further up front there is the battle for your race lead, and Ross McFarland at the moment still not close enough to be able to get Harrison by the end of the lap.
Yeah, Harrison has stayed very consistent in the 154s currently. There's been a few tenths of a second of fall off, yes, but the pace really has settled out around this ballpark. And in turn, if there was maybe a few more laps, McFarland might have a chance to close it fully, but right now, it's going to take a mistake or two for second or third to close up on Foley. Great run for Harrison, able to hold on even with a major mistake that nearly got him turned around twice.
Just has to make sure he doesn't make that mistake again. While the gap might be a bit bigger than it was early in the race, it is still under a second, just 8 tenths. And how about Sedgwick and Sutton looking to go at it? Oh, and more contact! Sutton gets sent wide! So does Jack Sedgwick. That allows Kabula up into the picture now. So it's all kicking off on the final lap of the race of the battle for 8th place on the racetrack. Kabula getting pinched in on the left-hand side and forced to brake early, as Sedgwick did not want to give him an inch of space to turn in to make Kamsa. And that is allowed Polasek into the picture now in the battle for the final spot inside the top 10. Polasek looking for the outside line. He'll be deeper on the brakes. Can Kabula just try to hang on? The 39 car, I think, will just be able to maintain that spot for the time being. Then it has been a solid run in this battle for the 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th spots as well. But coming around through the last couple of corners, Harrison's got 1 more corner to go. And that 93 car looking all steady in the 93 core machine. He will win race number 1 from Barcelona.
Absolutely incredible pace for Harrison in this one. Absolutely incredible pace for a majority of the front runners indeed, but give credit to Polasek and class leader. Nearly got the top 10 fully there, Nolan. He's been very quick, and in my opinion, I wouldn't be surprised to see him in pro class in a little while or so. Let's put it that way with the pace he's got for 2023.
What an exciting race. And I know that Barcelona has a bit of a reputation for not providing the most entertaining of racing. We'll tell that to touring cars, right? I mean, they can make any racetrack an absolute thrill to watch. And race 1, without any inversions, I think was a very perfect example of that. And it's going to only increase now as we get through all the chaos of the reverse grid. So, of course, the way this works is we spin a wheel here on the broadcast to decide how many cars are going to be inverted in this next race coming up here in about 10 minutes or so. So let's take a look at that now. Of course, if it lands on that logo, it is a full inverted grid. So as we get set to spin this wheel, we'll have to just wait and see how many cars are going to be inverted. I believe it's from anywhere between like 15 and 30 on this initial spin, and starting to slow up here Not sure if we'll get that ever coveted logo for a full reverse grid. We know how much chaos that would cause at a track that is so difficult to overtake on, and it's looking like 25, maybe 15, 27.
Oh, look at that, 27. It's not done.
I might get to 28 here in just a minute. It's going to be right on the line. 28 is going to be the number. That means 28th place, who finished 26 seconds behind your race leaders, is going to be on pole. And Kieran Harrison is going to be starting this next race from 28th spot. Goodness gracious, that is the biggest reverse grid we've had so far all season.
You know, the funny thing is, the person who finished 28th, the 007, that is Andy Schneal, I believe, he ended up having an incident that lost him 5 spots on the final corner or two. He may be the benefactor and then some from essentially getting involved in an incident.
Oh, the magic of reverse grid, right? Kieran Harrison was your race winner with Ross McFarlane in second. Carl Jensen was third. Gordon Guinness rounded off the 4th place with Josh Thompson in 5th. Swinovich was in 6th place with Fraser Smith in 7th. Ashley Sutton was 8th with Jack Cedric and Jaroslav Kabula rounding out the top 10, Justin.
11th spot overall on the racetrack, just so happened to be the M-Class leader and winner today, and Michael Polasek for race 1. Then it was Neil Butler. He also up to 79 of Rafael Drazik, separating things out with Dan Holland, Oscar Mannion. Also separating things out to the second car of the M-Class, that is Tom Dadswell. Quietly 19th to 16th. He passed on by Michael F. Duncan in the later stages. Craig Williams, 22nd, 18th. Alex Neller, very quick, 19th. Jake Blackhall, I should say, in 20th from 36th.
Jamie Rushworth Daniel Lee was 21st place with Jamie Rushworth in 22nd. It was Elliot Roberts at 23rd. Miguel Garcia was 24th. Benjamin Gregory 25th. Danny Robot, most spots gained on the day, started dead last on 43rd. He finishes 26th plus 17 for the number 32. Dan Camish was in 27th with Andy Shield in 28th. Lee Barrage was 29th with RaceSpotTV's very own Paul Smith rounded out the top 30.
31st spot today went the direction of Adam Hedgecock with James Coors in 32nd. Simon Field finished 33rd today in one of the Boosted Motorsport machines with Mark Fletcher with some incidents in 34th. Dan Robbins 35th. Robert Lundgren finished in 36th today with John Roberts 37th. Dan Mori at one point did have to pull it to the pit lane, finished 38th, with David Baker returning to the track after early troubles to finish 39th. Jonathan Walker in 40th. 2 other drivers took the green flag. Matt Bunn, 8 laps down, 41st. Ollie Peacock involved in the early crash, 42nd. Ashley Beard did not start.
What an absolutely thrilling race all the way throughout the grid from here. I mean, that was just phenomenal all the way through. And there you see Andy Shield for his last lap spin that lost him several spots. Just got tipped around right at the top of the hill. That was a bit of a close rejoin as well, but managed to keep it more or less out of harm's way. That was, I believe, at Bank Sabadell, the 3rd to last corner on the circuit. So Andy Shield will now find himself on pole position courtesy of that little bit of a punt. Do you reckon that might outweigh the benefit of him losing those spots and losing some points to start what would have been about 6 spots down if it hadn't been for that?
Possibly. It may help things in terms of calming down a bit from how angry you might be having that happen on the last lap in the last sector. Now here's the challenging part. We have the speed to back it on up at the head of the field. That's going to be the tough part because as we've seen in the second race of the opening meeting of the season, it can get very crazy in the first 2 laps as seen at Silverstone.
I mean, look at speaking of which, look at the race 1 winner, right? Only finished about 8th place in the second race because they were not able to break through traffic and work their way up to really fight for that second race win. And unlike race 1, it was not a team 1-2 for this time around. It was 2 very rival teams, I think it is worth mentioning at this point in time. So you have to wonder what that could mean for race 2 coming up, because they're still going to be starting right beside each other, but now they're going to have a whole ton of traffic that is arguably at least a second a lap slower than them right in front of them. It kind of makes you wonder, how long will it be before you really see a Carnage start to step foot here in Spain? I mean, Silverstone, you didn't really make it much further than past turn 2.
Yeah, especially with some people like on some of the inversion portions of the race day. for Silverstone. Like Paul Smith was sent hard into the wall in the third total race of the day. But in all seriousness, of course, in theory, you think, okay, you know there's cars who may not be as quick. Qualifying separation once the top 20 or so was about a second or so, right? You would have to pick the right spots. But in reality, as we all know, you see gap, 5 race cars try and jump into said gap. That's just kind of the trend of how things go in these types of races when the best try and move through the pack. They want to get there quick to the front, and if you leave them a hole of about an inch or two, they'll take 17 feet. In other words, it's not going to be easy for any of the drivers who are starting up the front per se, but in turn, they may have that advantage of if any of the front runners get involved in trouble, guess who's in the driver's seat? The drivers who had the inversion to get them to track position to stay away from Calamity Corner and Calamity Central.
Well, I mean, just look at the pass earlier when it was Mark Fletcher, I think, that had moved out of the way a little bit to allow Ashley Sutton through. And instead of just waiting around for his turn, Corrington Guinness fired one up the inside right after Sutton. And you could tell with the way Fletcher kind of jerked the car, he was not expecting for Guinness to make that aggressive of a move. But that's what you got to do in touring car racing, right? Especially at a track like Barcelona where it is so difficult to overtake. Because realistically, if you want to throw one up the inside of a long straightaway, if you don't do it on the front straightaway, you're waiting 2/3 of a lap before you get that opportunity again. And at that point, who knows what could happen. I mean, you could find just going off track and just losing all of that time. This is a track where if you see a hole, you really have to take it because you can't afford to wait much longer because, well, you never know what could happen within the 2/3 of a lap. I mean, 2-minute lap times around this place, that's a very long time in the racing world.
As seen with this event so far, 10 or 11 laps will be expected to be that main mark for the second race and the third race too, based on what we've seen race 1. So you're absolutely right on that mark, especially knowing the difficulty with Barcelona. But I'm also in the mindset of you need to be able to have a car to be able to finish the race. That's going to be the danger mark of trying to wait things out. I think for some, they're better at it than others in terms of that movement. We talked about struggles like Harrison for race 2 in the opening meeting day. I think drivers like Thompson might be very bold on this one. I think drivers will have to try and think before they try and block. Let's put it that way in the early going. In our words, things are going to get very, very busy for some of the top teams. And I think if you're some of those said top teams, you're talking a lot about the discussion points.
I would expect nothing less for this track to get very, very busy. I mean, it's busy as it is when you put, 43 different touring cars on it, especially considering, most times we come here, we're used to see, 25, maybe 30 cars tops racing at a track like this. Very rarely do we see such a massive field. And if we do get a large field like this on a road course, usually, it is a multi-class race. You could have GT3s in this case. It could be GT4s if you're already in the GT3, possibly LMP2s, LMP1s racing at tracks like this. It's very rarely where everyone's the same make and model, and I would even beg to argue that even, when the World GT Championship comes here, I mean, even those cars, the racing is not nearly as close because they generate a whole lot more dirty air than these touring cars do, and that's what allows these touring cars to race so much closer together. Kind of goes to show that just because the car might be faster doesn't mean the racing they provide is necessarily more exciting. And you mentioned it earlier, these cars can bump, they can rub. It's almost like they were made for it. In that sense, I kind of like to consider these almost the stock cars of the road racing world, because as we know, late models, they bump it up all the time on their short track racings back over here stateside. But these touring cars, they can do that just about anywhere and with almost no consequences as well, it's worth noting, unless it's like a really huge hit like Ollie Peacock took early in the race.
Well, you're not wrong about the thought process on that comparison. That did come into mind once or twice in the first few races I've called with this type of race car. But in turn, drivers usually don't want to be in that bumping fenders and rubbing doors and rubbing paint across each other type of race here at a track like Barcelona, obviously. So it's usually not expected for a lot of the road course racing for the top drivers. But in turn, even though there's not as much dirty air impact as you referred to there, it's still in that matter where you need to be able to get the right amount of draft to reel in somebody per se, down a straightaway, for example, which there's not too many long straights to do so here at this track. At the same time, if you do end up getting a great corner exit as we've seen, you have to be able to time it up to where you can get clear by the apex, because if you aren't clear by the apex, it's been very ugly so far. So in our words, you need to be able to make sure you're ready to go to battle it out in the pack itself. If you're not ready to go for the racing in the pack, buckle up. It's gonna get wild.
I think that is one of the bigger talking points, is the way these touring cars react when trying to overtake, especially on corner entry, right? Because I mean, you mentioned having to be clear by the apex, and that's not just because your guy could track in on you, it's because your car is guaranteed going to track out. The thing about front wheel drive cars, they're not exactly the best when it comes to corner radiuses, right? You often see people trying to take pretty wide entries in, so when you enter really shallow like you have to out of many tracks like this, especially with faster corners, you're going to track out to the other end very, very quickly, and that can result in either you spinning around or just shoving the other guy off of the racetrack altogether, which obviously just ensures basically that you're going to have the same thing done to you later on in the race. So it is very, very critical about having to be later on the brakes, but at the same time, not too late, because at the same time, you don't want to compromise your own entry, because it'll just allow you vulnerable to a switchback later on down the line.
And that's what I was about to bring up too, with what we've seen with what happened to Keenan Harrison, for example. That was the big turning point, I think, for this race, because that's where the cork went up the bottle, per se, for the lead. Because here's the thing, you mentioned the corner radius. Harrison really was the better emphasis of that. He missed the bottom line around the edge of the curbing by about half a car length, right? That half a car length put him right into the fender, essentially, of Ross McFarlane in his path. And essentially, Harrison was very lucky not to get completely turned around. He was lucky to hold on to it, basically straight the entire corner from that regard. So it just is to that window where if you do go too late on the brakes, you do miss that apex, someone will try and go for the cross-up. And as we've seen with Ashley Sutton, he tried that several dozen times in the heart of the pack and in turn had door-to-door contact. All of that's going to be very intriguing to see how they counter or adjust and in turn try and fix what may or may not have worked from race 1 and carry that to race 2 of the day.
As we get set to start the second race of the day, I have to wonder what the odds are that we're going to be seeing some three-wide action in the opening laps. We surprisingly didn't actually see a whole lot, if any of that, in race number 1. It was a lot of people more just taking it easy, but that was before you also throw a bunch of slower cars into the path of the people that were fighting for a race win. I have to imagine at least down the front straight of the way, there's going to be at least 1 or 2 moments like that. If not in the second lap, almost guaranteed in the first, in that drag race all the way down into turn number 1, which it's a bit of a unique run, isn't it? Because I mean, you start so early on the straight to the point where you can almost top the car out on its speed just from a standing start all the way down and towards that first corner.
Yeah, that was one thing I thought we may see a little bit more of in the first race, even off the starting blocks, and only a couple drivers were willing to do so then. See that going up a little bit more for the first corner. Here's the problem. The first corner is not necessarily made for the quick right click, quick left to be able to go 3 wide through that same section, right? There's a chance someone gets turned around in that corner if you end up getting too close, because everyone, from what we've seen, knows you need to stick to the inside of these corners, and that's why in turn I think 2 wide is more so the commonplace once you get into a rhythm. Not necessarily going to count out the start of sector 2 going 3 wide either, though, especially knowing what's at stake here in the next few moments or so. In about 10 seconds or so, these drivers getting ready to roll themselves onto the racetrack. It's going to be busy. And if you aren't aware of everything surrounding wise, Nolan, better get ready, because it's going to be a rough race.
Practice has concluded on our second race on the day so far out of 3 20 sprint races coming 20-minute sprint races here on today's event. Andy Shield gonna be your pole sitter with the reverse grid. Dan Kamish is in second place with Daniel Rowbottom in third. Benjamin Gregory is fourth with Miguel Garcia in fifth. Elliot Roberts down in sixth. Seventh place will hold Jamie Rushworth with Daniel Lee in eighth. Jack Blackhall in ninth with Alex Nella in 10th. Greg Williams is 11th with Michael Evdaka in 12th. Rest of the grid going to be coming through on your screens here as the field is getting set to grid up at a rapid pace as they are very eager to get this second race underway.
Yeah, and this invert's going to make things extremely crazy. On the bright side, Paul Smith will have a lot of popcorn to be able to view that from 30th.
Right? I mean, this is one of those moments where you just want to take it nice and slow because you know there's going to be something catastrophic that could take place right in front of you. As the grid is cycled through, the revs now starting to build from Barcelona for round number 2. And we are underway. Smoke flies. Xander Shield gets a phenomenal start. Dan Cameron just did not launch at all. He's lost 5, 6, 7 spots right out of the gate. Rushworth already pushing it 3 wide. Ellie Roberts trying to make it 4 abreast. Downwards turn number 1. That's not going to work out for the Honda Civic though. Contact sends Miguel Garcia a little bit wide along with Rushworth. It's all calamity on the initial start, but so far no major shunts like we saw in the opening race. One car did swing wide to the gravel of turn 2, but so far, other than that, a very clean start overall in this race. The top 2 have broken a mile clear of the field behind.
What did I say? Expect craziness. How about near 3 wide? Severo's a couple words towards the back now in this corner.
So far, like I mentioned, a very clean start, even cleaner than we saw in the opening race. Very much unlike what we saw in Silverstone, up the inside of one of the Napa machines and pushing them wide. That was the full-set car, Miguel Garcia, along with Alex Neller in his Repsol Honda Civic, trying to punch a hole through as well. And Camish thinking about returning the favor. That unsettled Neller sliding in. It's going to send Camish into the gravel. Coming back on track. And Craig Williams sent wide in the Craig setup shop Civic, but not a whole lot that Camish can realistically do there. When you get beached on the curbs like that, you just find yourself tumbling out of this race and unable to turn the car at all, even when you come back on track.
Absolutely busy and crazy. That was the expectation. Michael Dunca's trying to be among the drivers taking advantage, but a core car's off. It's Mannion. Oscar not having the best of starts here in this one.
And thankfully, Mannion was not very far to the grid and thankfully got shoved off the right side of the racetrack and not the left, right? So that way he does not impede anybody else trying to work their way through. As you can see, the absolute chaos starting to develop deeper behind as drivers start to work their way through this field. And we're going to take a look at that initial hit that Mannion took, and just the driver too deep on the brakes. And that sends him swinging way wide with all 4 wheels off the ground into the gravel trap.
That's Exhibit B of the day on what happens if you go too hard into the corner with the difficulty to turn the car. Speaking of drivers having difficulty to turn, that's opened things up for more side-by-side here.
And the Shield struggling to hold on to the race lead. Daniel Robot fighting the outside line through turn number 3. They almost made contact. I think they actually did make contact a couple of times all the way throughout turns 1, 2, and 3. He's got Benjamin Greger, one of the AM drivers, just sitting in the wings in 3rd place currently, trying to find a hole as well. Robot and Tux in line, but already looking to maybe take the outside line down into Renault, looking outside line, but Andy Shield holding the inside for now. And how about Gregory looking to take the battle to the pro drivers are behind, doorbang multiple times between Roberts and Neller. It's a complete war going on back here behind your top 3. As Roberts gets hit again, this time one of the Pearson drivers with Donka, and now if Donka gets sent wide, Roberts is driving angrily here.
Yeah, that was very dangerous. Let's put it that way with Roberts as he tries to use every inch on the racetrack. Roberts is making it very clear he wants points. He wants to keep up with the SM leaders and more cars off.
That's Swinovich, one of the top runners in race number 1, hard into the concrete barrier out of Capsa. I've never seen somebody wreck there before. I'm dying to know how that happened. As you look at some of the other battles further up the road, one of the Craig setup shop cars just getting overtaken by a full center racing machine. And you're gonna look at this battle now, 3 wide for Capsa, and the core driver just got squeezed. Nothing he could do, and that sends both drivers screaming off and hard to the barriers. That's gonna send both drivers out of the race side, imagine.
Well, what was I talking about before? 3 wide, yes, you can send it in a couple different places, but most of the grooves are about 1, maybe 1.5 lanes wide in preferential movements. So in that movement, most drivers are trying to fight for those 2 preferred lines for the corner exit. Converged on quickly, and now we have more drivers with that trouble as we see more of the battles. The 83, one of the full send machines, still trying to battle hard.
Miguel Garcia trying to keep Craig Williams at bay, and take a look at another replay of the incident that happened over out through Capsen. This was the other car, full 360 spin. That's not going to stop you though from going into the barriers, but there's not a whole lot you can do. And look at that, left front wheel completely bent out of alignment, destroyed suspension. Is going to see both of those drivers now out of the race. Battle for 12th is on your screens at the moment, with Drazax currently up the inside of Corey Guinness in the 333 machine, and it is a bit of a tight battle, but Guinness going to hold it around the outside.
And a nice solid run so far for the 333, and if I remember right, for race 2 and race 3, he was one of the few who got through the traffic very quickly and efficiently, without major contact, without making enemies, without making frenemies at the same time. Very, very strong so far for the 333 on the launch. But keep in mind, several of the heavy hitters are still in the midst of the top 20, barely, most of them back in the 20s still, who were your front runners in the first race. That's how difficult it is to get here.
You can see on board with Radswell at the moment, really just showing how difficult it is to just work your way through, or Dadwell, excuse me, trying to show how difficult it is just to work your way through this track, let alone trying to overtake, as beach on the sausage curves a little bit there on the edge of the final corner. That's a very risky move. We saw one of the core drivers having a huge moment through there on the opening race. Shield has so far broken away from the field, and Guinness is going to set the fastest lap overall of this race. There's the battle for second. Neller lunging around the outside line. Is that too deep? It is too deep, and that will allow Daniel Robot to hold on to P2.
I think the reason Neller's fighting so hard is he's got second place in the AM class as well, right behind Benjamin Gregory. And if he's able to make the move in front of the pro driver Daniel Rowbottom, that gives him a cushion for his respective class battle, with 3 competitors in that grouping, including Roberts, third in the class, all with a back bumper. And we've seen the 78 not been afraid to use every side of the car as a battering ram today.
Roberts looking to take the fight to Benjamin Gregory just up the road. So you've got first, second, and third in your AM class all in a big train at the moment. And Neller being held up by one of the pro drivers cannot be feeling good about that too much in his Repsol Honda Civic. And got Benjamin Gregory in his booster Hyundai just in behind, trying to see if he can try to find some way through, but has to hold off Elliot Roberts as well. This is replay deeper in the field. One of the Craig 7-Shop drivers in a Napa car, I think, tangling together. It was at Renault, and that sends that driver way wide. Good job to keep it out of the tire barriers, though.
That could have been very, 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 very bad, let's put it that way. As you see number 28 on screen, that is Sedgwick. I believe he's dropped the C now. Not really, but either way, Sedgwick, he's been really pushed around today and nearly been in close calls with the Napa machines all day, including Ashley Sutton. Both of them have not made each other friends today.
And as we know already with the likes of Elliot Roberts, when somebody's not your friend in a touring car race, they're going to let you know about it really, really quickly, and they do not show any mercy to any of the guys that they're battling with, or any guys that they're angry at as well. Here's Neller up the inside again of Rowbottom. Does he hold it? This time he does. So Alex Neller up into P2. Michael Avdaka trying to work his way through as well, with Benjamin Gregory just in behind. But the pro driver, he thinks he's got the right to be a little bit further up the road, so he's not going to give up in this battle. Making it now a 2-horse race for second place in your AM class. Elliot Roberts still fighting the outside line, trying to follow Michael Avdaka through. As it's going to get turned by Benjamin Gregory, and saves it through turn 3.
Benjamin. You talk about going for a hole. The hole opened up, yes, but he hit the curb and punched himself out of the hole. And now that's been the cork of the bottle for Jack Sedgwick to try and move up. Sedgwick, despite all the slipping and sliding and all the bobbles, he's currently in position to be on the podium for the pro class with that move.
Oh, and running over the back of Benjamin Gregory, trying to force his way through. The Craig Setup Shop machine is not a happy camper at the moment, and gonna get into the 113 once again. Looked on from Michael Avdaka, who's got a front row seat and no doubt a bag of popcorn in his hands, watching this battle starting to develop. These guys are not in the same class even, so that's not gonna stop Jack Sedgwick trying to find the outside line from Benjamin Gregory. He'll have the inside line as they switch it back around for Sabadell. and up through your car. Jack Sedgwick will have the position. Now we have Daka trying to follow him through as well. From the inside line in the penultimate corner, they make a hip check again.
What did I say? If you feel like you have the pace, expect drivers to try and push very, very hard. Like we've seen Sedgwick right there. Here's the thing. Roberts is now, as we're onto that shuffling, position to battle for second in the AM class. The overall race lead is also about to heat up because Alex Neller has closed the gap to the 007 with Daniel Rowbottom in tow in front of them, side by side in the corner.
And how about a little bit of a touch that time to the back of Andy Shield. Alex Neller, the AM class leader, wants to get through and get an overall race win against the pro class driver of Andy Shield. And Neller not going to be letting this one go anytime soon. Daniel Rowbottom P2 in the pro class also with this as well. Neller's deeper on the brakes and looking outside line, out through Repsol and down into Sam.
Look at that. Roberts has just had the cork go overflowing from the bottle. And that is not pretty. That's the heart of the pack. That's with Ashley Sutton as he tried to come down in the middle of the track as Sutton was riding in the middle of the racetrack, Nolan. Both drivers have lost time. Rushworth, one of the top drivers in the AM point standings, is now off circuit.
Heartbreaking stuff, right? That's what happens when you push it just a little bit too hard, though, and you hate to see that, and that is going to be a fight that is not, shall I say, going to be present, but could very much pick up in the third race on the night, which will be in about 20 minutes from now. Andy Shield has lost ground now that Alex Neller has fought his way through. This is a replay of what happened further back, and you can see Roberts. Oh my goodness, it was a whole bunch of hip check going on there, and that's going to send the Grace Stand-Up Jump Honda around, and I have to wonder there was some suspension damage done to the other Audi that was just stuck in the gravel there.
Yeah, and that is indeed Rushworth you've seen there. Roberts is dealing with significant wing damage, keep in mind, but not a meatball flag. We'll see if the 78 has to take the fast repair. More battling on, though. Rowbottom with the race of the season for the 32 so far, with a chance for second overall.
And that is with a pro class lead as well. Cuts across Andy Shield, who does not give him any space to work with. And Rowbottom is swinging out a little bit wider, trying to get the line that he needs to swing his way up and carry that momentum through Renault and into Repsol. I have a feeling this could potentially be one of those battles that comes to fruition as Shield tried to fight the inside, but instead ended up under fire from Jack Sedgwick behind him.
Yeah, Sedgwick's right now the fastest out of this group, I think, in raw pace. 153 for the fastest. Here we go.
A remarkable save from Daniel Rowbottom as I think he clipped the grass on corner entry and shot his Elantra around, and beautiful save. Kept it on the racetrack too. He has lost 3 spots because of it. But hey, I would take the losing 3 spots over bidding your car into a wall.
Yeah, that was incredible. Being able to keep it from majorly spinning around fully. But Rowbottom just may have thrown his best run so far the campaign out the window, currently out of the podium spots for the pro class. In our words, Sedgwick is now your class leader, but not the overall leader. And we haven't seen this so far this season, an AM driver win in one of these races so far. Can Sedgwick close up the gap to Neller to change that? Or Neller make history?
It's a bit of an interesting run, isn't it? I mean, you don't often see AM drivers winning these types of events, and I mean, that's what makes it so monumental whenever it does, because usually the pro drivers are just that much faster, but so far, look behind, the gap's over a second. Nobody's able to even contend with him for the time being. And in second place is 3.8 seconds back in the form of Gregory. So now he's got absolutely nothing to worry about up in front as he right on board with the battle for 10th place, or 9th place presently, with the 79 car trying to keep Tom Dadswell at bay.
Keep in mind you also have Fraser Smith also up there with Harrison and Butler. Keep in mind Harrison has gained about 7 spots in the past 10 minutes after being in 18th in the early going. And that 79 doesn't want to lose points. Again, that team has been fairly aggressive when it comes to defending so far this season. That's leading this pack now.
79 car is doing a phenomenal job so far to keep Dadsville at bay. Neil Butler is also trying to make a look. You can see Fraser Smith dropping a spot just in behind as he tried to look around the outside of Kieran Harrison. But by the way, after starting 28th, has only gained up to P12. Definitely not as far as you would have liked at this point. I think the shot of the race win is pretty much evaporated for your race one winner with just 5 minutes left to go.
That Hornets Nest is still busy around 19th or so. Keep in mind, that's where drivers Thompson are close to. You also have Oscar Mannion, who is up to 18th. He's picked up 2 spots this lap. Mark Fletcher, they're all trying to break the bit of the draft. We're also swerving about. And Craig Williams decides to lick the stamp and try and send it. All while David Baker has a one-man bandstand on the outside line.
He made it work. I'll give Craig that. He definitely did make that lunge work. I thought he was going to clean out the 39 and maybe even Mark Fletcher the 111, but Kebula able to just poke ahead all the way out to the third to last corner as they throttle down the Pure car and out through New Holland. So far, Kebula managed to hold that spot, but just look at how close Williams is. If we didn't see a lunge into turn 1, I would be stunned as we have 4.5 minutes left on the clock.
Well, Craig has been stuck back here for a good while. He started 11th, mind you, Nolan. He was one of the drivers who got freight trained out. Looks like the 39, though, knows what moves are in Williams in his head. He's ready to make these defensive moves here as the switchback attempt now from Williams. Tries to build up the run. Not enough of space, though, to get it done. By the way, the overall race lead is down to 3/10 the gap, coming to 2 estimated laps to go with under 4 minutes on the clock.
So battles everywhere you look starting to pick on up, including for the race lead as they're on the bottom right. You can see Sedgwick getting closer and closer to Alex Neller. So far on the main screen, David Baker still trying to find a way around Craig Williams, who in turn trying to find a way around Jaroslav Kebula. Baker makes this lunge though up into sand, and I think that number 6 car might have it. No, he does, and the Honda Civic pulls around in the Greg setup shop, Simsa Honda. That 360 of Craig Williams has been just phenomenal, trying to hold on to whatever spots he can, trying to punch his ticket further up in the top half of the field. On the bottom right, there's the battle for the lead. Sedgwick around the outside and Neller into Lekaitsa, but it's not enough to probably poke the nose in and go for the move.
2 great drivers, 2 great runs so far. 2 of the fastest cars on the circuit. Boosted Motorsport looking for a huge day. Jack Sedgwick looking for a huge points haul with the overall win. But I don't think Alex Neller's going to make this easy. Yes. Right now, the 67's in the best points position possible this season. Yes, he's in the sand, but expect him to still be defensive here, even with the lost momentum.
How about that? Looks like didn't get a good of a run as we would have thought. Cedric now pulls alongside with 2 estimated laps to go up into turn 1, but Neller deeper on the brakes, trying to fight outside line. Look out as Cedric starts to come across. Same news for Neller, but they somehow keep it out of each other. Some very respectful racing going on here, and Neller backs off a little bit. I think he might have let Sedgwick take the lead away, so that makes it a pro driver to lead. Looks like Neller might not be able to get his first AM win in an overall win, but it looks like, from the looks of things, it will be a Honda to win this race, which would be the first time we've seen this all season long.
And as some of the fans may note, the brakes are very strong on the Honda, and we've seen that cornering advantage helping a little bit with some of the traffic. Turn though, great run for Neller to be able to take advantage of some of the track position, but also get through the pack quickly. Jack Sedgwick, one of the few from the pro side who's been able to do so efficiently, up a grand total of 18 spots for the drop of the green flag. Compare that to some of his fellow classmates who were up at the front last time. They're currently playing bumper tag, as you can see.
And Michael Avdaka ran over the rear bumper before Gindas coming around through turn 8 last time by, and now trying to be deeper on the brakes on the outside line, cuts it in. There's another little bit of a nudge and gets one from behind by Rafal as well in the number 79 car. And how about not clear? Avdaka tried to cut to the left, didn't realize the 79 car was still there.
Similar call to what we've seen before, Nolan, for one of the packs when it came to Sutton. Of which Sutton's up to 5th and running away from this grouping. But either way, Avdaka having a good recovery after a very rough first race. Harrison having the exact same thing happen from Silverstone last time out. Stuck at the edge of the top 10, coming down to the final lap under 40 seconds to go on the clock.
Final lap of this race, looking a little bit deeper in the field. This is for Evdaka and the 79 car. The battle for P number 7, you can see, for 5th place, just up the road from them as well. But these three drivers are not going to give each other an inch. Kieran Harrison also in the mix as well, trying to work further up into the top 10. He won the first race. He will not be winning race number 2. And Harrison trying to find some way, any way he can, to try to look up past his Hyundai and Audi competitors just up the road.
Yeah, that Hyundai you're referring to, indeed, looking to really scrap it about. But it seems like the 79 may not be in the best position. Very compromised. Harrison may be able to get this done now with the preferred group for the next couple of corners or so.
This is a very difficult corner to try to overtake, and it's a risky overtaking to the Worth with the sausage curves, but manages, I think, to just hold it side by side and up through Krepsa. It'll be advantage Harrison taking this one around the outside line of the 79 car, and he will get clear. Now has to defend, though, as that 79 car going to be eager to try to fight the outside line away, all the way through Lakaiksa. Coming around, though, through the final couple of corners, Jack Sedgwick still holding the race lead up in front, and these battles have just continued to shake on up, go back and forth all the way throughout this race. Once again, reverse grid racing provides an absolute barn burner. We're going to be set to see it as well in race number 3. Jack Sedgwick in the Craig Setup Shop Simpson machine takes his first win of the season and the first win for Honda in the World Touring Car Series.
Absolutely bonkers racing, and that's to be expected with the invert, right? Definitely lived up to its bonkers namesake and tagline for this one. But incredible fighting to the end right there in that drag race too. Sutton just got his first top 5 of the year.
Absolutely incredible stuff for Ashley Sutton, taking his first top 5 on the season. What a race. I mean, this is just the second race we've had on the day, and we've still got one more to go. It's just like Silverstone, right? The first race a bit more civilized, the second race less so, and the third race is really when everything starts to kick off. Of course, second race did have a 28-car reverse grid, and you have to wonder, will it be the same in race number 3? And well, that's the only way we're going to find that out is by going to spin the wheel to take a look at your overall race results. And Sedgwick to win with Alex Neller in second. Andy Shield was third with Danny Rowbottom in fourth. Ashley Sutton starts in 5th place with Corey Guinness in 6th. Michael Evdaka was 7th place. Harrison fighting back from 28th place to land in the top 10 and 8th, with the 79 car down in 9th, and Tom Dadsville rounding up the top 10.
Then 11th spot tonight went to Ross McFarland for race 2 of the day. Fraser Smith in 12th. Then it's Camish in 13th. Benjamin Gregory 14th in the AM class, Holland, Maitland, Fletcher, Williams, Butler, and then Tibala rounding up the top 20, a decent run for the Semper Racing car.
And that will put David Baker in 21st place, Michael Coppola in 22nd, Peacock is 23rd with Lee Berridge in 24th, Ashley Beard is 25th with Danny Lee in 26th, Ellie Roberts 27th, James Corp 28th. Paul Smith gained 1 spot from race 1. He'll be in 29th place with Jonathan Walker down in 30th.
Paul Smith at one point, keep in mind, was in 32nd. Hedgecock is in 31st. The driver in 32nd is John Roberts. Simon Field in 33rd. Josh Thompson didn't get anywhere. In fact, he went to 34 for the end. Then it's Robbins, Garcia, then Lundgren, and Janssen. Then the number 80 machine rounded up the field with Jamie Rushworth amongst the lead lap competitors. Laps down, Blackhall, Maury for this second race of 3 of the day.
And with that, we still got one more wheel to spin to figure out how the grid is going to shake on up for round number 3 on the day. It is going to be a bit of an interesting run here, Justin, coming on up here into these final 20 minutes of racing action. It's going to be very, very entertaining with us coming on up here today. And I tell you what, I'm amazed at the type of race we've seen here tonight.
Yeah, it's been an amazing amount of racing here for meeting 2 of the campaign. Brands Hatch is going to be pretty intriguing. There's a lot of great race dates on this schedule, let's put it that way. With the Red Bull Ring, you also have tracks like Sebring that will put on a great show. On Ring, I'm curious how things play out. A lot of hard braking zones and a lot of chaotic sections on the racetrack. Silverstone, again, will put on some popcorn affairs. It's a great schedule and a great mix. I will give that credit.
I have to say, Silverstone National is, I think, going to be the most chaotic of the races coming on up here for us. I mean, it's the national layout, right? And we saw how, unbelievably chaotic the GP circuit was. How about just cutting half the course away for the national layout and putting the same group of 40 cars on it? So we'll now go to the spinning wheel to determine our reverse grid for this one. And it was a 28 car reverse grid last time by. We'll see if it'll be greater or less. The only way you can really get much higher than that is by having the full reverse grid, but it has to land on the logo and might land a little bit far. Now I say that, starting to get there. Will we have a full reverse grid? Not quite. Gonna tick on over to 29. I think we actually might get 16 here. And it looks like it will be a top 16 reverse grid. So cutting off about 12 drivers right there in the reverse grid from race number 2. That means Oscar Mannion going to be starting on pole position. And thankfully for Sedgwick, not as much ground for him to work out. He started 20th in race 2. He'll be only started from 16th this time around. So he's looking set to potentially go back to back.
I think for Oscar, that is absolutely huge because it's not been easy for him in the traffic, Nolan. He's not been the greatest qualifiers this season, which has put him on the back foot for much of the campaign from what I've noticed. But in turn, Oscar now has the chance to prove, if you give me track position, I can be fast because, as we've seen, it's a core car, and core cars, they've been rocket ships for much of the campaign and have scored a lot of strong points in the pro class.
And what a battle that he had with Alex Neller as well, right? I mean, that was an M-class driver, and he had to fight like a lion in order to properly take that position away, which I think goes to show just how much pace Neller has under that M-class car as well. I mean, it was a very hard battle, but I have to say, that was one of the very few battles for the race lead that didn't end with some form of contact all day today, and that is the type of respectful racing that we like to see. You talked about how these cars can bump it around. Not a lot of drivers want to, though. I think that type of race that we saw, especially through turns 1 and 2, that was the type of race that everybody's been looking forward to with this series.
Yeah, I agree. And in that regard, keep in mind, it's been to where we've seen crazy busy battles so far in the first few races of the campaign, yes. But I think for Neller, I expect him to be a little more defensive, yes, but when you think about it big picture-wise, do you really want to race the pro class leader for the overall win and potentially get yourself turned around with a driver who's made it clear if you open up the gap, he's sending it up the inside and is not afraid to give you a little bump in return? I think for Neller, he knew, take the points, take the strong run of the AM class, take the class victory, played it very smart. But you also throw in the 007 machine that had a very strong 2/3 of a race. I think if it was for Sedgwick, we might be talking about Andy winning this one by a sizable amount. Daniel Rowbottom was in a great spot until he clipped the grass on corner entry. He doesn't do that, we're talking about a different race potentially as well, if he's still in the mix too. So a couple different drivers who we haven't talked about all season and seen too much of all season so far, they made their presences known today, to say the very least.
Really goes to show that touring car racing is one of those types of racing where just about anybody can have a serious shot on getting the win if they just know how to handle the car. And I think Alex Neller proved that perfectly, that he knows how to handle the car. And had it not been for, like you mentioned, some of those pro drivers having their own mistakes, he could have been finishing 4th, 5th place overall, definitely not 2nd. And I agree with you when Neller kind of was thinking, just take the points and just leave it at that. Because you have to remember, he was about, 4 or 5 seconds clear of 2nd place in the AM class category. On top of that, I mean, you can't get much better than that other than going for the overall race win. But considering the pro class leader had cars in his own class that were a heck of a lot closer than any of the AM class cars were to their class leader, I think it was a wise move, I think, to kind of cut the pro class leader a little bit of a break and just let him have that one. Because after he cleared for the lead, he didn't really fight him out too much, did he?
Well, let me put it this way, Nolan. For some drivers, they take these moves into account, right? For how hard you fight and how aggressive you are for a race win or a very pivotal position. If you build the reputation of, I'm not afraid to launch it from 7 car lengths back and use the leader as a brake to win a race, you're not going to make friends that way. Let's put it that way. Yes, that's happened at least once this year on RaceSpot, for those who missed that reference. But in that regard, if you race someone cleanly, give space, give a lot of brakes, enter, know to pick your spots, that builds a lot more respect than trying to essentially say, I want the lead on lap 2, it's time to feed you my door 7 times in a lap, because you're not going to get the benefit of a back and some friendship back and benefit back if you just bump and bang each other. You know what I mean?
And I think I do know what you mean, and I have to say that with that, all of that in mind, it surprised me a little bit on how aggressive that Elliot Roberts was throughout that entire race. I mean, we talked about it before. I mean, he didn't just like rub doors to other people. He tried to bang the doors off several times over the course of just even like 4 corners. I mean, unbelievably aggressive racing on just the 4th lap of a race. And I have to wonder if he was a bit frustrated with how something was going over through his race, or how race 1 felt that he felt like that was the only way he could really make up those positions. But you can definitely tell it kind of did come back to bite him in the end, because he ended up finishing a bit lower than he was when he was fighting for those positions, because he got turned around as a result of those. I mean, it sucks, but I mean, at the same time, I mean, you start racing like that, sooner or later somebody's going to fight back, and it's not going to go very well for you.
Yeah, I think there was a span where he made contact with 2 or 3 cars in the same complex of corners, right, in the opening laps, and made it where drivers may not been comfortable to race around. But the main thing with the incident that came to mind, Nolan, is there's already a driver in the middle of the line being defensive, trying to set things up for their respective position battle. Why are you moving in the middle of the straightaway down to the middle of the racetrack yourself? You should have got the spotter call, or at least, you know, seen the car at the edge of right. It wasn't necessarily in the blind spot, Nolan. But
I mean, sorry, I didn't realize you weren't finished. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I understand trying to position yourself for a better line for the corner, but he kind of put himself in his own box by turning down right into sudden, not like he wasn't even there, or whoever was to the inside, and taking a couple cars with him.
The thing I have to note about that is, you mentioned, of course, you know, maybe the spotter did a call clear. I can guarantee the spotter was definitely saying there was somebody there, unless he had it turned off altogether. I mean, that's really the only way. I mean, it wasn't a case of, you know, like maybe it was like just within a bumper's width. Maybe they were flush door to door, and that's the only reason why both drivers didn't go screaming off the racetrack right then and there. And I think that they kind of take their lucky stars with that one, but at the same time, it kind of begs the question as to how the race in race 3 is going to be like. Do you think he might have learned his lesson from the race 2 struggles, or maybe it could even escalate?
I'm curious on that, because this was one of the first times this season he's been up at the very front of the pack. In that regard, I think at least you learned something from it in terms of what you need to pay attention to for the 3rd and final race of the day. But to counter that mark as well, Nolan, at the same time, it's the matter of how has he performed in a series? How has he performed in official? How has he performed against others in the past? And I think that's going to be something that people will take more into account, and rather than what lessons will he take from this, you know, when they're racing around him today for the final time.
You have to wonder if maybe the pressure from being so far up the grid, because you mentioned it was the first time he had been that far up so far this season. I wonder if the pressure just got to him and it got the better of him. And it's something that has happened. I've done the same thing actually before, and I'm not afraid to admit that I've been that driver before. It just gets to you. I mean, you find yourself that you're that far up and you realize, I might not get this chance again, so you race as hard as you possibly can and try to hold on to those positions, not realizing that you're more hurting yourself in the process than you are actually helping to regain your positions, because it also damages how other people are going to race around you. So, you know, maybe it was just the pressure. Who knows? At this point in time, though, he's got to just focus up here on race 3 and hope it goes a little bit better than his second race did.
Exactly, and I think for a couple drivers, you might be in that same boat too, based on what we've seen in terms of drivers trying to really position themselves point-wise. Bridger Smith, Ross McFarlane come to mind, for example. They'll start towards the front with the invert. Keep in mind, Nolan now So they're in a solid spot for race 3, but lost a lot of ground, in my opinion, in valuable points at the table to their championship rivals in that one. You also have drivers inside those inversion spots like Benjamin Gregory, who's also someone that needs a lot of points on the M side, has been in contention for a couple victories so far in the campaign. He's going to be in a great spot as well with the invert. In fact, starting inside the top 3, I believe, Nolan. So I think those kind of stars you have to put next to a couple of those drivers will be the ones you have to say, will they be able to get the points they need to today in this third race, or will they have some struggles? Compare that to Cedric. Cedric's proven he can get to the pack if you end up positioning himself in the right spots. It helps most of his competitors were back there with him. Now most of his competitors for the championship are not so much with him. So he's going to be on that back foot of at least 3, 4, 5 seconds minimum right off the launch, having to close up here once race 3 gets underway.
I have to wonder how some drivers approach this race could even dictate how we see the next meeting at Brands Hatch playing on out, because you look at Brands Hatch as a track and it is a lot narrower than the 2 circuits we've been to previously, so there's not a whole lot of extra room to go bumping and banging like this. It's a pretty one-line racetrack. I mean, one of the best overtaking opportunities is into turn 2, but that's only if you get a good run through the Paddock Hill Bend. Just about every other corner after that is a very long sweep or a kink where it is nigh impossible to go side by side with each other. And you have to wonder if potentially maybe how people end up racing here in this final race could dictate how much leeway some of them get from other drivers into a track that is much tighter and arguably even a little bit more difficult to overtake at because it is that much more narrow.
Yeah, I'm curious how this all plays into the hands of a couple of the drivers. And keep in mind the track conditions, we haven't talked too much about them, have been fairly sunny for the most part. The first race had a mixture of clouds come into play. The second race, more so sunny. Now we're approaching that later evening portion where those temperatures again transition a little bit more. So these cars will have that to think about as well, possibly in the adjustment side of things to make sure they aren't missing anything speed bit wise in their car for the third race, because that's the main thing you also have to consider too, right, Nolan? For how rounds like this go. Do you want to end off strong or do you want to end off with a whimper?
I have a feeling a lot of drivers are going to be saying they want to end this race off on a high, which is why we're going to be seeing a lot of people pushing a lot more aggressively in this race. We saw it in race 3 at Silverstone, that this was the race where people were, being a lot more aggressive than they were in the last 2 races because there wasn't any other chances. And I think we're going to be seeing a second verse, same as the first, here in round 2 at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. Practice is over. We'll take a rundown through your starting grid now for how this third and final race is going to be shaken up with a top 16 reverse grid, which of course will mean that 16th place from the last race just a moment ago is going to be starting on pole position. And pole position, in fact, is going to be that of Oscar Mannion with Dan Holland beside him on the front row. Benjamin Gregory is third with Dan Camish in 4th. Fraser Smith down in 5th place with Ross McFarlane down in 6th. Tom Dadswell is 7th with the number 79 machine in 8th. Kieran Harrison is 9th place with Michael Evdoka in 10th. Courtney Guinness and Ashley Sutton in 12th. As always, the rest of your grid going to go through on your screens now as these drivers get set to grid, Justin, for the final 20 minutes of racing on the day.
You've worked a lot with Evan lately, so I'll give you that as the benefit of the doubt there. But Michael Polasek, I'm surprised, didn't really have the best of race 2s after being very dominant pace-wise in race 1 in the AM class, keeping a star against him as well. Josh Thompson, he's going to need to improve a lot in this one. He'll be trying to go very, very aggressively, but the clouds have settled in. It's time to go racing.
Lights out for the final time today here from the Circuit de Barcelona and Catalunya. Oscar Mannion does not get the greatest of launches. Dan Holland about even with them. Same story with P number 3. Benjamin Gregory looking to see if he can charge anything up in towards turn number 1. But how about Fraser Smith looking outside line and side by side for third. The top 2 still single file into turn 1. They bang doors for P number 3, and so far a couple of drivers having some struggles deeper in the field, but up in front it is all clean and green to the first couple of corners, and looks like that's what we're trying to fight the outside line out through Renault and the exit of turn number 3 up in towards Repsol. It's been a good run so far for the likes of Dadswell, who's going to push his way past Benjamin Gregory. Try to at least as Neil Butler shoving off one of the drivers behind in the middle of Repsol, and I'm not sure who it was that went screaming off. I believe, though, it was Andy Shield, a driver who's in contention for the race 2 victory.
Second time today he's been moved off the racetrack, let's put it that way, as the Napa know-how machines try and show that their drivers know how to get back up towards the front. Meanwhile, that 333 machine has been one of the best passers when it comes to these early starts. Quarantine trying to do the same here to get back to the top 10. A great launch for the 333.
And it's looking feisty up the road as well in the battle for P number 4. You see that just at the edge of the screens as a lot of drivers having some close calls as you look up to the number 9 car of Garen Harrison, and cones go flying as he tries to run down the likes of Tom Dadswell just up the road. Up over the back end of Ross McFarlane, one of the drivers that was again in contention for a race 2 victory as well as a race 1 victory. And on board now with Dadswell, who is still trying to close up to Benjamin Gregory to overtake him, what would be for P number 5.
Now Gregory really being dicey, that is, for a class position that is the class lead for the AM cars. Hence why how aggressive Gregory is getting in the boosted machine. And I wouldn't be surprised if Gregory tries to hold on as hard as he can to the side-by-side here, knowing what's at stake. Near contact.
Oh, and there's a touch there, and that's going to send Gregory wide, and he gets into one of the core drivers. Harrison, the race 1 winner, sent wide, as well as Gregory cutting into the grass on the inside of turn number 3. They all managed to survive it, though. No further incidents. Oh, I say that I speak too soon. The number 79 turn by Guinness right into Benjamin Gregory, and it's all starting to kick off deeper in the field as everybody's sliding on everywhere. All of a sudden, this track's starting to look like a skating rink with how much tire smoke is being flung up.
Oh, someone's got spun up in the front. It's the AM class leader. It's been punted. Dadswell just got punted off the track by Keenan Harrison. As they still fight, now once again, it's Gregory in the class lead because of everyone else and having a busy time having fun and wrecking.
That is a very huge moment deeper in the field as Dadswell now send outside of the top half of the field. We'll look at this one here down to 19th place and watch Harrison. Very late lunge. I'm sorry, that's not really on. Dadswell still very much had the line here. Harrison was just barely had the nose in when they did touch. I think that was a move that Harrison probably should have waited. I mean, it's a 20-minute race. Those are not the kind of moves you need to be making in the first 2 laps.
Don't you know on iRacing, 20-minute races mean it's technically actually a 20-second race for some people?
Yeah.
I'm joking, by the way. Here's a look at some of the air trouble. While that move was definitely not on, that move was even more not on, and that's how you lose yourself 4 spots in about 5 or 6 seconds. As what in the world was that?
How about some rallycross racing? It looks like the full century wants to get into. That was Michael Polasek, who swung way wide in New Holland. That was the battle for P17. So kept it out of the barriers, but talk about having a bit of a moment going off track. It's about as far off track as anybody go without hitting the barriers all day today so far. Take a look at this one.
Wow, you talk about missing the bottom. Craig Williams licked the stamp. It fell onto somebody else's table, and it knocked the table with such force that it nearly knocked the table through a brick wall. That's called licking. That's trying to be very aggressive and missing your apex. Let's put it that way. By the way, Williams did the same thing with Dadswell just a moment ago.
And there's a big shot to the back end of the number 57 Napa know-how machine. Guinness is not a happy camper trying to punch his ticket through, as there's going to be more time behind him. Donga gets set off the track. Look out into turn number 7. Comes back on. And he hits the core driver off. 4 wide coming back on. And it's a pile up through the exit of turn number 8. Gordon Guinness is sent for a ride. Gregory is involved. Neller was involved, the race 2 runner-up and M-Class winner, and they're still spinning off the track. Out against the campsite. Take another look at this one here. One of them tell you about how this is the race where everything's going to get wild, and one of the Pearson's drivers sent for a wild ride, and nothing he could do there when it comes to getting back on track.
Wow, that's pretty much half a team taking on one corner slip up, and they still kept it up. The triple three machine is completely destroyed, so now one of your top runners of the points coming into today is absolutely decimated. What in the world is this race?
Complete chaos is what it is. Like I said, race 3 is where it's all going to kick off. They have swapped for P2 as Ross McFarlane tries to lunge at the inside of Fraser Smith, trying to get a run on Oscar Mannion as well. And that's with the pro class lead. McFarlane missed turn 1 though, and that allows Fraser Smith to cut back up the outside, of 2. They'll have the inside line for 3. They touch once, twice, 3, and that is just gonna give Smith the run. But McFarlane already looking to cross him over, back down into Repsol at turn 4.
Will this be on for the drag race then? McFarlane definitely hugging that corner of the racetrack though. Great corner entry to hold on to the edge of the curb. Fraser Smith giving a decent amount of space here too. There goes that goodwill and thrown out the window by McFarlane turning in and blinking the lights. Yeah, that wasn't on for that turn in, that aggressive.
And all of this while Dan Holland trying to close in. He's going to give a shot to the back end of Ross McFarlane as well. Nobody likes that Pure Sims car today, it would seem, as Ross McFarlane is just getting beaten around left, right, and center. Holland will have the run for Kempsa, and there's a bit of a shot further in the back. What is happening here at Barcelona? Just complete and utter pandemonium. That is the battle, I believe, for about 20th place or so, but everything is so jumbled up in the middle of this that actually might be down for 26th.
I'm speechless because the first thought in my head was this was the calmest start of the day. Then you have all this happen, and then it continues and goes on and on and on like a pink bunny with a drum. And in turn, give credit to all this, Paul Smith has actually moved up a few spots through all of the craziness. Team Mad Driver, I think, is going to be not mad right now with how he's doing in this one compared to how meeting day 1 went.
And up in the New Holland, Pulisek side by side with Elliot Roberts, one of the great setup shot machines. And there's Simon Field going to get into it with Pulisek. And that forces Fields into the grass, but they lose almost no speed. Miguel Garcia in the mix of this as well, going to be trying to help out his full send team in 2 different full send cars, 2 different matches as well. Honda looking to help out an Audi here. Down in the turn number 1, deep for Pulisek, and look out! Roberts cannot turn in like that when there's still somebody on the inside line, and I think that might put some red mist in Michael Pulisek's eyes now.
You think there isn't already right now with how things have gone for 2/3 of his day? After starting so strong, Pulisek has just floundered. Didn't get anywhere in race 2, getting pushed around race 3, and now they're wrecking behind him with Simon Field getting shoved off the racing line by Dan Murray, who's actually giving the spot back in the most sportsmanship-like move of the day.
You don't see that too often in touring car racing, but shout outs to Dan Murray for giving that spot back. Realize, yeah, probably shouldn't have done that, so you let him go, and just that, incident redress, no harm, no foul. And I think now things have settled down enough that we can take a breather, but not before. It is almost halfway already through this race. This has just flown by as you look on with the 3rd place driver of Ross McFarlane trying to close up to Fraser Smith and Oscar Mannion just up the road. And could a full send driver end up on the winner's step for race number 3 in round number 2 of the World Touring Car Series? Oscar Mannion looking to work with it as well. There is Evdaka just in behind, currently 38th place in his Pure Sims machine in the 989. Doing a good job so far. He did come in a little while ago, had a meatball flag, Justin, that he had to serve, as you pointed out. So bit of a bad moment for him. Evdaka will not be in contention to win this race as McFarlane's up to 2nd.
A lot of swapping up in this battle still. Give credit to Oscar. That's the reason he's ran at some of the highest levels on iRacing in the past year or 2. Very consistent when it comes to his marks and is showing you give him track position, he can hold on to it. The problem is, everybody else is now getting to the point, it looks like, Nolan, where, especially coming to 5 estimated laps to go, he makes one slip up. One slow corner exit, one missed apex by a quarter car length, someone's going to take a peek. Even to the outside, they're going to take a peek like McFarlane right there. His window to breathe is closed. It's time to make sure you don't hyperventilate.
up through Worth. No moves being made this time by, and a good thing, because so far every move that's been made in the Worth this race, even throughout the first two races, is not, shall we say, gone to the most ideal of fashions. Out through Kempson, down the longest straightaway. McFarlane loses a little bit of time. Oscar Magnin seems to be really, really good through Kempsa. He can just hold that run, though, through, like Ike said, in this final sector. Maybe he could keep McFarlane at bay down the front straightaway. I don't think that's going to happen, as look at how much McFarlane closed in on corner exit.
Hard send once again, and I think McFarlane's trying to set this up to where if he can try and get a better launch on corner exit, he could try and power his way towards the right side of Magnan in through turn 1, try and get the move done there. If not, make it to the start of sector 2. They're dead even, though it looks like this time, and Oscar Magnan also knows the impact of the draft, starting to try and break it a bit, hard to the inside.
Not gonna be enough though. McFarlane's there. He's gonna look outside line coming down in the turn number 1. Ross McFarlane wants to have a run up into Elf corner, around the outside. He's gotta hope that McMahon doesn't miss the apex, and then he doesn't, and a clean pass puts Ross McFarlane into the lead of race number 3.
I don't think it's not done yet. Oscar Magnan's trying to give a bit of a bump draft now at this point. It's looking like, again, McFarlane knows there's the potential to move to the right side, taking away that opportunity, forcing the 99 to go to the long side. It doesn't look like Oscar has the grip, though.
Not for the time being. It looks like Ross McFarlane is just a little bit more steady. As look out behind! Fraser Smith getting sent into the gravel trap by one Dan Holland, who I think was done waiting around and tried to have a look on the outside line. That just went all sorts of wrong. Smith now back to the 10th position, so still inside the top 10, but can't be feeling good after that one. And that gives both McFarlane and Mannion a little bit of breathing space.
Very, very troubling, unfortunately, for Smith, and as described, part of his season so far with troubles up towards the front. That's also opened up the door still for this. Harrison doing a better job in race 3 compared to race 2. Ash Sutton has consistently been at the tail end of the lead pack every single race, it seems, so far today, Nolan. Sutton might have a very solid end of the day points tally.
And there you see Holland just driving straight through Fraser Smith on the way to turn up at the corner. I don't know if he wasn't thinking that Smith was going to break that early for the corner, but I mean, you have to keep that into consideration when you're that close to somebody and they've got somebody right in front of them, right?
Exactly, that consideration has to be thought about, knowing if there's someone, say, in front of somebody else, then you should expect that them to back up the braking mark that little extra bit, potentially, to make sure they don't run into the car in front of them in turn, which feeds on slowing up that braking mark a little bit more. You just need to be able to have that awareness, and unfortunately look like some of the drivers try to capitalize a little bit for maybe didn't realize what was in front of there. By the way, M-Class lead, Gregory is in 15th overall, holding on to it, but Ashley Beard, who missed race 1, mind you, Nolan, is battling for that class, as well as we see that now on screen with some of the others battling up in the front still.
And these battles going to pick on up, as here is the look from a replay. Whoa, ends up the 20 car, slams the wall. That was in a New Holland, I believe. That is a tremendous hit, and wonder what on earth. I think he just got beached on the curb and got a bit sideways coming off of it, and you can see that these battles are all just kicking off everywhere you look on screen at the moment. I mean, what an absolutely thrilling race we were being treated to, with just over 5 minutes left to go, as Ashley Beard sends one of the drivers up into Worth. And that was Alex Neller, race 2 runner-up, that just got punted around again. So Nella being sent by a 1, Ashley Beard, and I do believe that was for the M-Class P2 right there, Justin.
As a matter of fact, to correct you, that was for the lead of the class, Nolan, to add even more weight to it. Danny Lee, in turn, trying to take advantage, also a part of the AM class, now battling with one of the pro drivers. But oh man, has this class been absolutely wild today. Check that indeed, you are right on the second. While that happened, Ollie Peacock passed on by them to take advantage and take that class lead.
What on earth is happening in Spain in the final race on the day, as you'll look back to the battle for, I believe this is going to be 18th place at this point in time, with Danny Lee up there. Take a look at a replay. This happened way further back. as I think that was Neller getting sent. Yeah, that was Alex Neller getting sent by Ashley Beard up into Worth as we look at the battle with Danny Lee and Swerdovich down into turn number 1. And I think the IndyCar just holds that but jumps over the sausage curve, and that could have been disastrous if the turn machine didn't back off.
Yeah, this is getting very ugly. I'm going to put it this way with how they're starting to spar out here. 4 minutes to go coming up on the clock. Track conditions already 71 degrees Fahrenheit, so very cool. But the tempers in the cockpits definitely picking up those temperatures that the drivers may be feeling in their rear-wheel sim rigs and their seats right now. Now we're to the right side.
Trying to regain lost time on the outside of Tom Dadswell. This is 4th position in the AM class. In fact, every driver, save for Swerdovich just up the road, is 4th position in your AM class at the moment. So Neller trying to fight the outside line. That'll be the inside now, the exit of Worth, as Dadswell gets sent a little bit wide to the corner, trying to keep Alex Neller at bay and having to hold the inside line.
Nice, good run for Dadswell coming out of the corner, though. Neller still just not able to get back into the rhythm as the compromise side by side really cost him a bit of time. Keep in mind, Ashley Beard just up the road from them, a couple car lanes, in fact, just missed the bottom with Peacock. All these cars, keep in mind, have lost 3 seconds to the next pack, 7 to 14th, which have lost about 5 seconds to the next pack, which involves the leaders. McFarlane has also gained about 3/10 this lap to break the toe just about of the rest of the leaders.
Makes you wonder, right, what they were holding in the back pocket every time coming up before this. Harrison looking for the outside line. That time by on Dan Holland decided not to force the issue, but there's only 3 laps left to go. So Harrison is running out of chances to go for another race win here from Barcelona. Looking for the inside line this time up into Repsol, but Holland's going to defend, forcing Harrison the long way around the outside line, and looks like the core driver is just going to hold on to it. Dan Holland going to be able to keep that 3rd position for now, but that's not going to stop Harrison from going back at it again around the outside of Sant.
Look for the cross, though. Set up perfectly for Harrison to try it, but Holland again shutting the door. He's a competitor that's raced fairly well in some of the club league competitions, Nolan. One of the more impressive runs I've seen at this type of a level for the number 9 machine, though. Not going to be easy, though, to keep on defending if he keeps on hitting the turtles like he's done the past 2 exits.
On board with Ashley Sutton, who's got a good view of everything going on just up in front of him. Look out for Holland defending once again, and that's going to open up the door for Sutton to look up the inside of Harrison, who tried to fight the outside line. This could be the break that Holland was waiting for, but Harrison's going to give Holland a little bit of a push into the corner. We're starting the final lap this time by. There's a bit of a touch between Sutton and Harrison.
More touchy-touchy. Coming up to about a couple estimated laps to go. Something just happened to Mark Fletcher as well. He was running in 8th. Fletcher has been pushed off the racetrack. The cars you've been keeping an eye on have pulled away from him. Here's a look at what just happened with Fletcher in particular. As, oh boy, that was not clear.
And Kabula, I think, tried to look up the inside, and Fletcher didn't expect that to happen, so just turned right in on him. Have started the final lap now of this race, and so far Harrison still needs to try to find a way to work his way up into the podium. I think it's safe to say that he is not catching McFarlane, who's still 2 seconds up the road from him. But so far, Kieran Harrison still doing a good job on trying to fight out for the final podium position. Do you think he can get there by the checker flag?
For a podium position spot, possibly. For the lead, I think McFarlane is gone. McFarlane's just having to make sure he doesn't make any mistakes, especially with under 30 seconds now on the clock and coming up to the final few moments potentially of this entire race. It all comes down to the execution, this sector, this right here, to have a true shot on swapping around for a podium spot.
Just 10 seconds left on the clock, and the battle for 4th place is starting to pick on up as 3rd is pulled away from Harrison. He's going to have to be more on defense here against Ashley Sutton, just in behind. That number 12 car still looking strong. The Pearson's Napa know-how driver looking to try to find one up the inside of Kieran Harrison. Gonna have to look this one the long way around, though, through Lakaisa. Was not close enough to have the look position. I think with that, Sutton's hopes of getting further up inside the top 5 have just been dashed. as they come around through the last 3 corners. What a race it has been so far. The battle for 8th has just swapped hands as Fraser Smith works his way around Kabula. That battle's going to look to pick up right towards the wire. But coming around the exit of turn number 15, and Ross McFarlane going to take victory here in Barcelona. And McFarlane puts that Pure Sims car back in victory lane. And what a solid race for McFarlane to work his way up and finish on the top step of the podium after starting down in 6th place.
And give Ollie Peacock credit, he took advantage of everybody else in his class having a wrestling match for about a sector and a half, passed on by them, then they wrecked. Peacock picking up some valuable points in the class after a very busy round today here in Barcelona. A very busy 3rd race, mind you.
How about one of the full set cars doing a little bit of burnouts down into Elf Corner at turn number 1. Absolutely stunning race today. I mean, just a non-stop action from start to finish. Exactly the type of thing you want to see. Yes, a bit messier than the first 2 races, but exciting nonetheless. Ross McFarlane takes a race win after yet again another 11 laps, with Oscar Mannion down in 2nd place. Dan Holland is 3rd, with Kieran Harrison in 4th. That'll put Ashley Sutton in 5th, with the number 79 down in 6th. Jack Sedgwick finishes P number 7 after starting 16th, with Fraser Smith in 8th. Kabula worked from 20th place to finish 9th, and Craig Williams rounds out the top 10.
11th spot goes the direction of Carl Jansen after a lot of bumping and banging triggered by Williams. Jansen passed by almost everyone Williams bounced off of in the final 2 laps. Dan Camish was one of the drivers bounced off of by Williams, got shuffled to 12th, with David Baker falling to 13th. The number 80 finished in 14th, while the M-Class winner in Peacock took the victory by 3/10 over Ashley Beard, 15th and 16th. Denny Lee took advantage of some of the troubles to get on the podium for the M-Class in 3rd. Dadswell finished in 4th. Miller finished in 5th in the class and 19th overall on the racetrack, while Benjamin Gregory rounded out a streak of AM drivers lined up in a row in 20th.
And that will put Mark Fletcher in 21st place, with Lee Berridge in 22nd. James Corp is 23rd, with Neil Butler in 24th. Dan Morey finished in 25th place, with Elliot Roberts in 26th. Miguel Garcia was 27th, with Jake Blackhall in 28th. Adam Hitchcock was 29th, with John Roberts rounding out the top 30.
31st spot went to your points leader coming into today's meeting of action. Quarantine finishing 31st to close out the day after a crushed in front end. Doka, I should say, finishing 32nd, with Robinson 33rd, Rushworth in 34th, Rowbottom amongst those who did have to come to the pit lane in 35th. Paul Smith, he got into another shoving match in Sector 3, then got turned head-on into the wall again to finish 36th. Polasek, DNF 3 laps down to 37th, with Lundgren in field behind him 38th, 39th. Walker finished in 40th, while Josh Thompson, after some pushing and shoving on lap 2, pushed the ejector button to finish 41st, and Andy Shield finished in 42nd.
Absolutely stunning race today. I mean, you can't get much better than that at the Circuit de Barcelona in Catalunya. I mean, that race was right on par with exactly like we saw over at Silverstone just 1 week ago. And I mean, an amazing run overall. And now we have some drivers that will be able to give us a bit of a chit chat, and we'll kick things off here with one Fraser Smith, who has been all over the place in today's running order in all 3 races. But overall, Fraser, I would say a solid point today for the 167 and the full send crew. You must feel good about that one.
Yeah, really strong, really good points. But in the last race, I'm not very happy about that. But it's what it is. Stewards can just see that one. But to get P8 after facing the wrong way in the gravel, I'll take that, definitely. In the Audi through the last corner, I just couldn't carry the same speed as a Hyundai, so I just couldn't get any runs into turn 1 really. But that's what it is.
When we look forward to the next race at Brands Hatch, the only thing that track has in any remote comparison with Barcelona is the fact that it can be a little bit challenging to overtake. What kind of racing do you think we can expect at a track that's arguably a lot tighter and a lot more technical than the one we have at Barcelona here?
And it'll be good. Qualifying is going to be important. Everyone's going to be quick there. A lot of British guys in this, so they all know the track. But yeah, from past experience, you can overtake, but it takes a bit of to and fro with the person you're racing, really.
Thank you, Fraser, for taking the time to join us up here on the broadcast booth. Overall, a solid points run for you, and like you mentioned, despite facing backwards, you still fought back to finish inside the top 10. Great run for you today. Hopefully it'll be an even better one at Brands Hatch next week. Thanks for joining us. Best of luck.
Cheers, mate. Thanks to you guys. Thanks to all the organisers, my teammates, and Major's Garage. See you next week.
That was Fraser Smith joining us, P8 at the end of race number 3, Justin, but still a solid points day for him overall. And we get set to kick things off over at Brands Hatch. We're swinging back to the UK before we throw things more to South America, where we go racing at Interlagos for round number 4. An exciting 2 races coming up, and 2 tracks with a lot of history behind them as well. I have to say, I am very excited for the next 2 races coming on up in particular.
I think they're going to be 2 very busy rounds and very intriguing rounds to keep an eye on, especially with what we've seen early on this season. And here's the thing to consider. It's not sprint races for Interlagos, it's the feature format, meaning 2 races, 40 minutes apiece. Much longer format in turn, Nolan, which in turn will test the endurance of the drivers compared to the 60 total minutes of racing we see with the sprint format. So that's going to be, I think, a round that a couple drivers may put some stars next to, knowing that here's the thing. You win a feature race, how much do you win per point? 120 is the top step on the overall points tally sheet. 116 for second, 112 for third, compared to the 85, 81, 78 for the sprint side. So that's something to keep in mind and consider. And at that same time, you have to consider early on in the season, if you get yourself caught into a bind, especially for a track like Brands Hatch, you're going to be in for a lot of catch-up down the line. And I'm not talking about the bottles of it. I'm talking about the game of catch-up.
A solid race, no doubt, going to be waiting for us as we swing back over to the United Kingdom before we turn things over to South America. And I have to say, very, very excited for what we are going to be seeing coming up for us in just a few weeks' time. I mean, going to be a very solid race there indeed, just like this race and the race before has been for us, as will the rest of the season. For now, though, from us here from RaceSpotTV and the World Touring Car Series, myself, Nolan Rempel, and Justin Prince, along with Hugo Luis at the cameras, time for us to bid farewell here from Spain. And we'll see you all next week when we hop back across the English Channel to go racing in Brands Hatch.